What's going on YouTube? And welcome back to another Then We Eat video. On today's episode, we're going to be making sausage. Sausage is one of those things, it's pretty time consuming, but honestly, other than the stuffing part, it's actually pretty easy. So the pork we're using for sausage today is actually pork butt. The neat thing about pork butt is not only is this pork good for regular sausage, but you can also use it for pork chops too. I picked up about a 14-pound pork butt yesterday. I only need about 12 pounds of it. So we're gonna hack off 2 pounds of this and turn it into pork chops instead. So that's where we're gonna start. And then I'll show you what kind of pieces I use for my pork. Generally, you want them small enough that it fits in your grinder, but it doesn't really matter what size they are, as long as it fits in that grinder. So since I've cut the end of the pork off, I think the first thing I'm gonna do is show you roughly the size pieces that I like to use before I put them in the grinder. So we're just gonna take them, and as I said, it really doesn't matter. So as long as you've got pieces that look something like this, you should be able to drop them right into the meat grinder. My meat grinder kind of is a hopper style, so you drop it straight in, and that's a nice piece to get into that hopper. What I'm gonna do with my pork, I'm gonna throw it into this pot over here, and then I'm gonna use the pot to mix the spices. I have about 12 pounds of pork, as I said, so I wanna make sure that I have lots of room in my pot to mix it. And then from there, I'll probably break it down into Ziploc bags just because the pot's awful big for the refrigerator. Bit of a fat cap on the bottom of this, so I'm actually gonna steal that for my sausage to make sure they're not under fatty. It's very important that you make sure that you have lots and lots of fat for your sausage. So as you can see, like I was talking about, nice piece of chunk of fat right there. So I needed about 1.97 pounds of pork, and I ended up with about 1.95. So we're pretty close. I'm pretty happy with that. We'll set that aside. We'll put it in the freezer, let it freeze together, and then tomorrow we'll vacuum seal it. In the meantime, let's get chopping. As you can see, a nice fat cap on this. In a lot of applications for cooking, you're gonna wanna remove some of that. But like I said earlier, we need lots and lots of fat for this, so that's actually perfect for sausage. One thing I'll say about 12 pounds of sausage, better make sure you're ready to do a lot of cutting. Okay, so you've got all your pork chopped up and you think you're done. Not so fast. Remember earlier when I kept bringing up fat? Fat is very important for these sausage. Unless you like a really lean sausage, you actually need to add extra fat. Lucky for me, we do a lot of beef brisket, so I have a lot of extra brisket fat laying around. And despite the fact that I use pork, and this is beef fat, it really doesn't matter for this. So we're gonna add a bunch of extra fat to that now. So over the course of time, you can try to find the fat that you think is right for you. The fat I found was right for me was about 3 pounds of pork, including all the fat that was in that pork, to about 1.25 pounds of fat. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna chop that up now. And again, all you're gonna do with this fat is you're just gonna chop it up into grindable sized pieces. So very similar to the size that you did your pork. Okay, so we finally reached the end. I'm gonna give this a bit of a mix around just so when I show you what's in the pot, it isn't just a bunch of fat stacked on top. Then I'm gonna wash my hands and we'll be right back. Okay, so now we're on to the fun part, spicing our pork. Generally on this channel, we'll give you the full recipe for whatever we're cooking. Today, this is a recipe that I created by myself based on a few other recipes online. It's also one I use to give sausage away for Christmas and birthdays to friends and family all over. So I'm gonna keep this one to myself. I will tell you what spices I use, but I won't tell you how much. So the first spice we're gonna use today is just a little bit of salt. Well, maybe a little more than a little, but we're using salt. And then we have some pepper. Got some chili flakes. And again, this is my favorite recipe. If you've got other ingredients you'd like to use, go right ahead. This is more or less just a way to show you what I make for sausage and how to do it. So the next thing is some thyme and some oregano. Got a bunch of chopped garlic, paprika, some basil. Generally for this recipe, I use dried basil as well as dried parsley, which is the next ingredient. But today we had fresh stuff in our garden, so I chopped that up. We're gonna use that instead. I looked online, it says it's about 1 tablespoon of fresh for every teaspoon of dried. So there's one last ingredient we're gonna use, and that's just a little bit of pan-fried fennel. You just wanna pan fry it very briefly. You definitely don't wanna leave it too long, it'll burn. But the important thing is, by frying it a little bit, you're bringing out a lot of the aromas and flavors in the fennel. Okay, so we're at the stove now. We're just gonna toast our fennel seed really quickly, about 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 at the most, on about medium heat should be good. And then right into the pot it goes. Turn it on medium heat, kind of let the pan come up to temperature, and then all you're gonna do is you're gonna kind of swirl it around. Just make sure that the fennel seed doesn't end up getting burnt to the bottom and it doesn't burn at all. Because if it burns, you wanna throw it out and start over. And as you let this toast, you're gonna really start to smell the fennel. Kind of gives off a bit of a black licorice smell. But don't worry, your sausage aren't gonna smell like black licorice. You're gonna get a bit of a heat out of them, but not really black licorice. Once you see those seeds go from green to a browny color, you know you're in pretty good shape. So it's just about there now. We're gonna turn the heat off here in a minute. Then we're gonna take them over. We're gonna get them ready to put them in our sausage. Okay, so we're now back over at the pot. We're gonna add our fennel seed to our sausage mix, and then we're gonna give it a nice old stir. And let all those flavors blend together. And don't worry, it's okay to get your hands dirty now. This pot is pretty high, so it's a little difficult for me. I normally do this on the floor. I'm hoping that I can get it mixed up without going to the floor. As you can see, the pork is really starting to change color as all those herbs and spices start blending together. So once you're happy with the mixture, you're gonna wanna put it in the refrigerator. If you've got enough room to put it right into the fridge from your pot, you can go ahead and do that. Typically when I make sausage, I put it in the refrigerator for about a half an hour before I start grinding it. In this case, I got really ahead of myself. I did it the night before, so we're gonna let it sit overnight and then grind it in the morning. Good morning, food fam, and welcome back. It's been about 13-ish hours since we put the meat in the fridge. Now it's time to grind it up. As you can see here, I've got a KitchenAid with a meat grinder attachment on it. You can use whatever kind of attachment you'd like. So basically all I do is I just kind of start loading the meat right into the hopper. I've got a stick here. I just kind of push it down as I go. And we just grind away till we run out. I've got it on the big setting here. I think you can see it in this camera over here. So I've got the big setting on. I'm gonna run it through once. I'm gonna see what it looks like. I may end up doing it again on the big setting, but typically what I'll do is I'll switch to the little setting, and I'll do the little setting twice. You've got to do this pretty quick. You want to make sure your meat stays as cold as possible. I like to throw mine in the freezer. I had a pot last night that I kept all my meat in. I didn't end up transferring it to Ziploc bags. I was able to get the pot into the fridge. So I wasn't able to put it in the freezer. I may have to do that later. I'm hoping I can do it quick enough. Without further ado, let's get going. Okay, so that's our first grind done. As you can see, it's kind of little chunks of meat now, much smaller than the chunks I cut up last night. So I'm pretty happy with the way that that's kind of broken down. So we are going to switch to the smaller one now, and we'll be right back in a minute. Okay, so I flipped the grinder over to the smaller attachment now. I've got the pot switched around. We're gonna give it another grind, and then I'm gonna check it and see what it looks like. I may decide after 2 it's good. Sometimes I do 2, sometimes I do 3. When I first started doing the sausage, I did 4, and I found that was just way too much. I thought that I needed to do it that many times to get a nice grind. You really don't, and you end up heating up the meat too much. So after the second one, check it, check the consistency of the meat, and if you're happy with it, stop there. If you think it needs a third one, give it a third one. So I'm gonna give this a quick stop for a minute, and we're gonna take the cap off. I think I've got a piece of fat in here that's kind of making things a little more difficult than it needs to be. So I'm gonna clean that out. That's one of the things that you're gonna have to be mindful of when you're using one of these and using a lot of fat. There is a bunch of gristle, and it will not grind through, so it ends up getting clogged in there. You can just clean it out, and you should be good to go. So let's keep going. We've got a lot of grinding left to do. Okay, so we're down to the end here. I finished grinding it for a second time. I'm pretty happy with the consistency of it. Nice long strands of meat. But the last thing we're gonna do just before I commit to it, we're gonna put a piece of bread through it. That's hopefully gonna run the last bit of meat through the grinder, and it's gonna get it ready to get put into the sausage casings. Don't worry about the bread. The slice of bread isn't gonna make too much of a difference. There's so little bread that's gonna get mixed through 12 pounds of sausage meat that you'll never even notice that it's there. So let's go ahead, run that bread through, and then we're gonna get cleaned up here and get ready for the stuffing. So there we have it, that's 2 grinds. As I said, we're gonna clean up now, we're gonna get ready to stuff the sausage. All right, so one more step just before you can stuff the sausage, you do need to prep your casing. So you can get this casing at pretty much any butcher shop. So all you really wanna do is, it's cured with a salt that keeps it from going bad. So you just wanna wash that salt off. You don't want the salt in your sausage. So all you really do is you just want cold water, and you're just gonna run it through as best you can, and then we're gonna let it soak for about a half an hour. You just turn your tap on. The nice thing about these is it's on a Ziploc bag top. So you can kind of just open the top up, and it has a bit of a hole there, and if you let the water run right down, it'll go right through and out the other side. As you can see, it'll start to cause a bit of a bubble, and it'll start to fill with water. Then just turn it over and let the water run back out. Run water over the whole casing itself. As I say, just try to let it run right into the casing as well. Just let it run. As I say, you can see it's gathering in the bottom. Just kind of drop that out. Then let it run again. And again, just kind of hold it up. You can see that bubble there. Just kind of pull up a bit, and it'll drain out. Then there's one at the top. So again, just turn it over and let it drain out. Then what we're gonna do, I've got a bowl here. I'm gonna fill this bowl full of water. And I'm just gonna put the sausage casing right in. Just kind of roll it around, sits all the way in there. Fill the bowl up all the way. Something like that. As you can see, it's wrapped around the outside, and then just let it soak for about a half an hour. And in a half an hour, we'll be back to start stuffing. The other thing I should mention is I went to the butcher shop and I picked up actual pig intestine, which is generally used to make sausage. If that gives your stomach a bit of a queasy feeling, don't worry. You can pick up a more artificial style, I guess we'll say, casing. Doesn't come from pig intestine, might make you feel a little better. But honestly, if you eat sausage, you're probably used to eating the pig intestine anyway. Okay, so it's been about a half an hour. we've let that casing soak. I've gone ahead off camera and I've rinsed it out very similar to the way we did before, just to make sure that anything that was kind of soaking in the bowl is now gone. And now it's time, we're gonna put it onto our little spout. As I said earlier, I picked this up at our local butcher shop. Luckily for me, they're very kind and they put this little bit of a hole on here and they put it in a Ziploc bag. So it makes these very easy to load. So all you're gonna do is you're gonna put the hole right into the spout, and then you're just gonna slowly kind of pull it away and let that casing go right onto your spout. Just like that. You're ready to go. There's a lot of water in there, so you'll probably want to give that a quick wipe. Then you're just gonna tie the end of this off. We're gonna wait to do that till we stuff our sausage and get a little bit of the air out of our container. You're gonna end up with a massive air pocket. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna put the sausage in the top of this container here, and then we're gonna get started. So I've got the sausage into our press. We're gonna go ahead, we're gonna case the sausages. I will note that I did not put all of the sausage meat into the press. I like to keep some out. We keep some loose so that we can use it for spaghetti sauces, stuffed bell peppers, that kind of thing. I also turn some into patties. It's great if you want a sausage burger, and it's absolutely perfect if you're looking for a breakfast sandwich. So without further ado, let's get stuffing. And for this part, I am going to need a hand, so I'm going to bring Steve into the camera now. He's going to give me a hand. You may have seen him in such videos as cheese making and many others that will be coming. And in the meantime, he's going to help me stuff these sausages. Away we go. It's a clean break, I guess. So, as you can see here in the pan, we got a big stack of sausage. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna just kind of clean it up. So, as you can see, we ended up with 2 trays of pretty fat sausage. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna twist them all, make them into actual sausage. Probably make them about maybe this long because they are pretty fat. You don't need them super long. I'll get going on that. You'll be able to see me in the other camera doing that, and we'll see you in a minute. Okay, so they're all twisted up, all into sausage. Size isn't exactly even. I had some trouble getting them all to kind of roll evenly. I ended up with about 31 sausage here, which is a pretty good number, and then a whole pile of loose sausage meat. I'm gonna go ahead and get that sausage meat ready. As for the sausage themselves, I'm gonna throw them right into the freezer right now and make sure they're nice and frozen, and I'll vacuum seal them tomorrow. Okay, so time for the loose bits. We're gonna start by doing our loose meat. We're gonna get 4 1-pound packages, and then whatever's left will turn into patties. I'm looking at about 5-ounce patties. When we get to the end, I'll have to do some math to see how we make them all even. In the meantime, let's start with our 1 pounds for our loose meat. One thing you wanna do if you don't like getting a lot of meat stuck in your hands is you can make your hands wet before you start, and that will keep your meat from sticking to your hands quite so much. So there's 1 pound there. I'm just gonna set it on this cutting board, on this tray for now, and we'll keep going. One of the things I forgot about when I first made my sausage was, yeah, you use 12 pounds of meat, but I also used 5 pounds of fat. So you're looking at almost 17 pounds of sausage, plus all of your spices, which don't add a ton, but does add a little. So you end up with probably 17 and a quarter pounds of sausage when you're done. So there's my 4 loose packs. Now we'll get into the patties. As I say, we're looking for about 5 ounces for these. That's what 5 ounces looks like. If you want a bigger patty, make it bigger. If you like a smaller patty, make it smaller. It's entirely up to you. I really like 5 ounces because I find that it fits really nice on an English muffin for a breakfast sandwich. It's great on a hamburger too. Perfect size. Okay, so we're finished. We ended up with about 31 sausages, 4 pounds of loose meat, and about 12 sausage patties. It's a pretty good day. The patties and the sausage we're gonna throw in the freezer. We'll freeze them overnight. We'll vacuum seal them tomorrow. The loose meat can be vacuum sealed and thrown right in the freezer right away. So I do have the end of a roll of bags that I had been using. I forgot to start the camera beforehand, so if you see, I've already sealed the bottom of the bag. So now all we're gonna do, we're gonna put the meat in it, then we're gonna vacuum seal it. The last thing I do, I like to write on the top what it is and when I did it, just in case I end up with a pack from before. At least I know to use the old pack before the new one. Into the vacuum sealer it goes, close the lid. Your vacuum sealer may be different. Basically, they all work pretty similar. And then seal away. Boom, and you're done. 1 down, 3 to go. Bag number 2 is complete. One thing I do find is that if you squish the meat down and kind of fill up all of the room in the bag at the bottom, it seems to vacuum seal a little better than if you leave it in a big ball. There we have it. 4 bags of sausage meat. Okay, so last step of the day, we're just gonna flatten the sausage patties, put them in the freezer. So let's get flattening. Try to keep them kind of round like a hamburger. One of the things I will also do is to just take your knuckle and you just kind of stick it right in the middle, leave a bit of an indent. What that's gonna do, it's gonna keep the patty from shriveling up and turning into a golf ball, or a softball, I guess. It's a little too big for a golf ball. But it keeps it nice and flat and doesn't let it kind of shrivel up and round over. The one thing you wanna be careful of is you don't wanna overwork them too much. You wanna make them flat, kind of make them round, but you don't wanna have to handle them too long. That should be good. That's our 12 patties done. Now they can go into the freezer. One thing I'm not sure I mentioned yesterday that I should mention is we put parchment paper down on both cookie sheets before we threw them in the freezer. Makes it much easier to get those sausages and the patties off of the parchment paper as opposed to the cookie sheet. Now I'll show you how to do the sausage. One of the things I like to do with the sausage is I'll take a pair of scissors and I'll cut between each of the sausage just so that they are easier to fit in the bag. I also find this is much easier and probably a little safer sausage-wise to do once they're frozen. As you can see, I did not put parchment down for the sausage, and they're not as easy to take off as the patties were. If you can avoid them sticking together when you freeze them, that works too. As you can see here, the casing kind of pulls apart when you try to split them if you freeze them together. One of the things I like to do is I like to make my vacuum seal bags quite large. I just find it a lot easier when I go to seal them. Don't like fighting and fumbling trying to squeeze that last bit out. I know it's a little bit wasteful. It's a lot easier and a lot less stressful. So there you have it. All the sausage and the patties are now packed into bags and they can head into the freezer, and there's just one step left. And you know what the best part about making sausage is? A little bit left over means you get to have a little snack. So what we'll do is we'll make a little tiny sausage patty, basically like a burger. We'll fry it in the frying pan, get to try a little bit, make sure it tastes okay. Then we'll give you a quick wrap up, let you know what the flavor's like. So, as you can see, nice patty that looks like a hamburger. So we're gonna cook that up and we're gonna see what it tastes like. Put my stove on about medium heat. The other nice thing about me frying up this patty for you guys is I'm gonna show you the pan and the patty actually frying up a little bit. Then you get to see what kind of fat content I have, and it might give you a bit of an idea of what you're looking for your patties. So as you can see, there is a bit of fat starting to form in the bottom of the pan. but it's actually not too bad, which is nice. You don't want a ton of fat in the bottom of the pan, but just a nice layer is about perfect. As you can see, well cooked. You can see those herbs poking through. A little bit of garlic there. See some of those chili flakes. Looks pretty good to me. So there you have it, food fans. Sausage 101. As I said to you last night, you can put pretty much anything you want in your sausage depending on what kinds of flavors you like. I found this recipe was absolutely perfect for me. But if you like other ingredients, go right ahead and do those instead. And don't forget, first we cook, then we eat. So good.